Alright guys, so this story is absolutely insane in terms of the levels of cowardice that are currently on display from the Democratic Party. So we have been covering the widespread protests led by young people, by students across the United States against Joe Biden's handling of Israel and Gaza. And it looks like, according to this reporting here from Politico, that the Democratic Party is considering moving the DNC convention that is set to take place in August to basically like a hybrid online version of it in order to quash or to avoid any internal dissent at the convention. So this is wild. They say President Joe Biden's top advisors are all too aware the ghosts of 1968 may haunt the convention here, but they're grappling with a pair of more urgent and thoroughly modern-day challenges as summer nears. How far can they go in reprising their virtual 2020 convention to mitigate the threat of disruption inside the arena? And how will they navigate a rookie mayor who unabashedly sympathizes with the protesters? I love how they're portraying Mayor Brandon Johnson here, who is somewhat more of a lefty, right? And I actually kind of like him as a mayor. But they're portraying him as what? That it's unreasonable that he unabashedly sympathizes with the protesters, right? He's sympathizing with protesters who are protesting what? A genocide that our government is fully complicit in. But that's somehow like a wild concept to the Democratic establishment that Brandon Johnson would be, in favor of some of these protests. They say trumpeting the success of their COVID-era convention 4 years ago, some in Biden's orbit are aggressively pushing to make the 2024 conclave a hybrid production. That would mean in-person speeches from the president, party luminaries and rising stars to draw television attention alongside a mix of pre-recorded testimonials and videos from other parts of the country. I would love to know who these luminaries and rising stars are. Are we talking about like Pete Buttigieg here? Who are we actually who are the rising stars in the Democratic Party right now that they're talking about featuring? And I mean, they're also saying we had so much success in our semi-online convention from 2020, which the entire reason that happened is because we were in the middle of like the peak of the global pandemic with COVID. And now they're saying, let's just do that again, not because of COVID, not because of any health-related reasons, but because there's a significant portion of our own voting base that is standing against us on this particular policy. And they harken back to 1968 when there was a mass eruption of protests at the DNC convention, which was, I believe, also in Chicago at the time, against the Vietnam War. And so they're scared of basically the same thing happening. And let's be clear about something. That should happen again. Okay, this should not be like a standard peaceful, I won't say peaceful, but like a standard, operating procedure here for the DNC convention. If the party is fully complicit in a genocide, it seems like maybe there should be protests. Maybe there should be some disruption, some, displays of internal dissent. Because let's keep in mind where the polling is at on Israel and Gaza. At this point, a majority of Democrats, previous 2020 Biden supporters, believe that Israel is in the midst of committing a genocide, and that, by extension, Joe Biden is fully complicit in arming and funding said genocide. I mean, this is not like, we're expecting some radical, lefty, communist anarchist to show up and disrupt everything, right? You're talking about a policy position here that is supported by the majority of your party, okay? These are your voters that you have to have on your side in order to win in 2024. But you're saying, no, we would rather shut the whole thing down to avoid any sort of dissent in order to just shove through this deeply unpopular candidate and to try to like artificially manufacture the perception that everything is fine and good, right? They continue, they say, the goal is to drive maximum viewership on television and the internet while minimizing live programming and openings for protest in Chicago's United Center. This would mean moving party business such as rules and platform votes off the floor and denying would-be demonstrators a chance to seize on contentious debates. While the Biden campaign, White House, and convention planners have only just started hatching plans, senior Democrats tell me that they're discussing whether to conduct such business before the convention even begins or to move it out of the arena and across town to McCormick Place, their other Chicago venue. They're talking about moving locations to avoid having any sort of internal dissent. I mean, what are we doing here? They say, Also under consideration for Chicago is reviving the pre-taped delegation roll call from each state that happened back in 2020. And we have a quote here from one of these convention planners saying, and they're lamenting here, as they point out from Politico, that if there is one peep in the hall, the networks will be all over it. So again, it's very clear exactly what their intention is by doing that. Now let's remind ourselves of some of the recent polling data that has not been so good for Biden. Now keep in mind, we're a long way out from the election. I've seen conflicting, sets of polling data. Some have Biden slightly up in certain places, some have Trump massively up in certain places. This is the most recent poll that came across my feed. So here from Edingermentum. And I want you guys to just notice the side by side here, right? So on the first slide, we have, if the 2024 presidential election was conducted today, are you choosing Joe Biden or Donald Trump? And so in all of these swing states, right, Wisconsin, Biden is up by 2%. And you'll notice this is the only state where he's up by 2% in this poll. In Pennsylvania, he's down by 3%. In Arizona, he's down by 7%. In Michigan, he's also down by 7%. In Georgia, he's down by 10%. This is a state he previously won, and which also elected 2 Democratic senators, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, back in 2020. In Nevada, he's down by 12 percentage points. These are swing states Biden needs to be in play in order for him to even have a chance at winning. And so the second slide here is, if this year's general election were held today for Senate seats that are currently open, which candidate would you be more likely to vote for? And so here we have the Democrats versus the Republicans. Now notice something here. In Nevada, when it was Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, Trump is up by 12 points. But then you look at the Senate race, and here the Democrat is up by 2 points. You look at another one in Arizona. Kerry Lake is down by 4 percentage points to Ruben Gallego, right? Go back to Arizona for Joe Biden. He's down by 7 percentage points. Pennsylvania, the Democrat, Bob Casey, is up on David McCormick by 5 percentage points. In Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin up by 9 percentage points. So in every single one of these swing states, the Senate Democratic candidate is outperforming Biden by massive margins. So what does that say? Joe Biden is a massive drag on the Democratic Party. If anything, he is only going to hurt these down ballot races. So he's not only, with his own set of policies right now, hurting his own chances of winning re-election and essentially handing off the chance of getting another Trump term to this genocidal maniac in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's handing that off to him. And in the meantime, you have all of these other Democratic Senate candidates who are drastically outperforming him. Biden is a drag. He is a historically weak candidate that Democrats just decided to force upon us. I mean, this is the same Democratic Party that essentially eviscerated anything resembling a fair Democratic primary process. They tried to shut down anybody who dared to speak out or to try to run against Joe Biden, as they're radicals, they're crazy for doing this, you're only helping Trump. It turns out the person who's actually helping Trump is Joe fucking Biden. Now we also have this here, the current projections from RCP, which basically takes a bunch of the mainstream polls, culminates them or brings them together into one average. And this is where the average is at right now. 2024 Electoral College, if you have no toss-up states. So this is basically looking at, the average of all of these different polls in these swing states. Whoever's up, we're assuming that they're going to win that state. And I mean, you look at this map, guys, they have Trump winning Arizona, Trump winning Nevada, Trump winning Georgia, Trump winning Michigan, Trump winning Wisconsin, Trump winning Pennsylvania. I mean, literally every single swing state, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, every single swing state, according to this current projection, is going to Donald Trump. And I mean, they continue down here, like, even if Joe Biden were to, if we were to assume that Joe Biden wins, the places where the polling data between him and Trump is the closest, it's even then razor thin. I mean, this is a projection of 270, which is the amount that you actually need to win the Electoral College, to 268. So this is a situation where Biden wins by 2 Electoral College votes, and that is assuming that he somehow overcomes the, polling and wins in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, right? And also holds on to the rest of these states as well. So, I mean, listen, guys, it's not looking good for Biden. And to be fair, this isn't just because of his Israel-Gaza policy. I think that's a substantial reason, if you look at specific demographics, right, of young people, of, Arab Americans as well, of a wide array, of a diverse coalition of, Joe Biden supporters or previous Democratic Party supporters who just have a principled stance against genocide, and they've seen the relentless, bombing of innocent men, women, and children over the last 6-7 months, and they say, I can't vote for this guy anymore. That's a substantial portion of the reason why Joe Biden is struggling, but that's not it. I mean, there are other issues as well. Like, look at how Joe Biden has handled immigration, where he's simultaneously pissing off both sides somehow. I mean, he put forward this extremely right-wing, draconian, militarized plan for addressing the border crisis or whatever, and you still have Republicans who are saying he's open borders, right? So you have that attack coming from the right, and then at the same time that you're not winning anybody over by trying to push forward with a right-wing immigration platform, you're not winning anybody over from the Trump side, but what you are doing is you're pissing off your own base of supporters, right? How many immigration activists help Joe Biden get elected in 2020 because he was running on the, I'm not going to put immigrants in concentration camps kind of platform, right? I'm going to be more humane in my treatment of immigrants, right? What happened to that? So you're pissing off both sides of the equation. And that really goes with almost every single major issue, right? I mean, one of the biggest issues that is actually a win for Joe Biden in this election is something like abortion. But even on that issue, yes, Republicans are totally insane. They're totally draconian when it comes to these abortion crackdowns, and their position is deeply unpopular. But also, at least for me, it's like, what are Democrats doing to protect abortion rights? Do we have a coherent plan in place to enshrine Roe v. Wade as the law of the land? Is that something Joe Biden is even aggressively running on as a part of his platform? I mean, I've been struggling over the last couple of months to actually get any sort of understanding of what Joe Biden's platform is for 2024, outside of, I'm not as bad as Donald Trump. I mean, seriously, can anybody think of what specific policies has Joe Biden promised to implement if he gets reelected and if Democrats take the Senate and they take the House? What's his platform? What is he promising? The child tax credit? Is he promising a $15 minimum wage? Is he promising a Green New Deal or universal health care or, getting housing prices under control? What is he actually even fucking running on right now? Outside of, we need to defeat the authoritarian fascist threat of Trump, which is something that, at a fundamental level, I agree with those criticisms of Donald Trump, but at the same time, I'm supposed to take you guys seriously? The supposed vanguard protectors of democracy who won't even have an actual Democratic primary? With a candidate like Joe Biden, who a majority of Democrats months and months and months ago, before the primary even took place, said, we do not want to have Joe Biden run again. I'm supposed to take this party at face value. You're the defenders of human rights and international law and democracy and, normalcy and whatever else, and you're actively arming and funding a genocide. I mean, this is, it's a sick joke at this point. I mean, we have two of the most historically weak candidates in the history of this country. Donald Trump is weak for his own given reasons. Joe Biden is weak for his own given reasons. Not even just the ones I just mentioned, but also, his age, his obvious, senile decline that we have all seen over the last couple of years. They both have their own given issues, but they are both also deeply despised and deeply disliked and not trusted by the vast majority of the country. I mean, at this point, I'm almost like, I want us to have multiple options on the ballot, not just in terms of like having a real multi-party system here and to get rid of the Electoral College and other things. But at this point, I'm like, we need to just have a ballot measure every single time that we have a presidential election where we have at least 3 legitimate options. Option number 1, Republican candidate. Option number 2, Democratic candidate. Option number 3, send them both to a fucking gulag, okay? And if we choose to send them to a gulag, if that gets the plurality of the vote, then we get an election redo. 2 new candidates, right? We need something. I don't know. We need something like that, okay, to break this absolutely absurd status quo that we are currently facing as a country, okay? There is no anti-genocide candidate, other than Jill Stein and Cornel West, who, let's be honest, don't really have a chance at actually winning the election. I'm probably going to end up voting for Jill Stein. I live here in Washington, D.C., but there's no, out of the 2 major candidates, throw in RFK if you want as well, there's no anti-genocide candidate. There's no candidate who wants to implement the Green New Deal or who wants to implement Medicare for all or universal housing or any number of these massively popular and necessary policies. We just don't get that option. We have a political system that is totally dominated by corporate interests, by lobbyists, by billionaires. And so the average American is left behind with no real electoral options whatsoever. And then on top of not having real electoral options, okay, you also have the Democratic Party that wants to move their fucking convention online so that people who would normally be a part of their voting coalition, people who would normally be going out and canvassing for Democrats, they can't even go and protest at the convention. That's how authoritarian the Democratic Party has become, at least internally. And so, I mean, that's where we're at, guys. I mean, it's a nightmare situation. It's not getting better. Democrats fucked up allowing Joe Biden to run again. And, if we get a second Trump term, it's not going to be the fault of the anti-genocide protesters. It's not going to be the fault of young people not being motivated to show up. It's going to be the fault of Joe Biden and the rest of the Democratic establishment that has forced this neoliberal managerial status quo on the American people, when what we actually need is bold left-wing structural change.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying